Hello, and welcome to SIGCSE Morning Coffee, the show covering everything going on at the 2021 SIGCSE Technical Symposium from Long Beach, California, Alvaro and Larry.
And from Kalamazoo, Michigan, I'm Pam Cutter. Morning, Alvaro. It's a beautiful day, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's early at 7 a.m., Pam. I literally just got up and I'm trying to get some coffee, in me.
It's 10 o'clock. I'm already working on brunch. The kids are off to school. I've walked the dog. Things are great. The morning's going well. We're halfway through the morning. Come on now.
Pam. Literally, I'm like on my first cup of coffee. It's early. All right.
Alvaro, it's 10. We're Eastern time. Come on.
Guys, hey guys, it's Mark. You two do know that there are different time zones, right? You know, like Long Beach, California is a little ways away from Kalamazoo, Michigan. So,
right.
So
sorry,
you're
Alvaro.
saying I was right. It's early.
Right. For some of you. All right. Well, Alvaro, do you know, what do we have coming up?
This weekend is workshop weekend. A reminder to you all that you can still add workshops to your schedule by editing your registration in Cvent. We have a lot of great workshops during 3 different sessions on Saturday and Sunday.
Great. And it's only $30 to add a 3-hour workshop. So make sure to check out the symposium website at sigsc2021.org or in Pathable. Just remember, though, you have to add the workshop in Cvent, not Pathable. Right?
We would also like to thank our supporters of the SIGCSE Technical Symposium. Make sure to check out their exhibits and sessions throughout the week.
And after the break, we will be back with the interview. So stay tuned.
Bye. Welcome back. Joining us now from Dublin, Ireland is Brett Becker, an assistant professor at University College Dublin and global liaison for the Technical Symposium. Brett, welcome to SIGCSE Morning Coffee. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's really nice to be here, Alvaro and Larry.
It's great to have you. And you have a paper that you'll be presenting on Tuesday, March 16th. That's in the US. And what I was hoping that you'd start us off with is a preview of that work, which is on geographic diversity.
That's right. Yeah, this is something that I've been looking at for a couple of years and working together with some other SIGCSE colleagues. I won't name them, but their names are on the paper. And what we did very briefly was we looked at a lot of statistics on the symposium over the past 10 years. So exactly the decade 2010 through the end of 2019. And we looked at ACM membership data, SIGCSE membership data, and then symposium attendance and authorship data. And very broadly speaking, our first look was US and outside US participation. So that's broadly, that's what we looked at. And then we broke it down. We have different countries, different continents, et cetera, but it confirmed, I want to say, our suspicions, because that's the turn of phrase, but it wasn't really a suspicion. It just put numbers on the known fact that the symposium in the past decade is largely attended, and most of the participation is from US-based attendees.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and it'd be interesting, of course, to look at the data for this year, clearly, because everything being online, the travel and the expense of hotels, but specifically travel for international participants, all of that has been eliminated, right? And you just need an internet connection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was just going to ask, this paper, is this a product of the global committee, or is this separate?
No, it's separate. The global committee contributed in a couple of ways, sometimes getting information. This stems back to a panel from Portland, which never happened, that had several other global committee members on it. And that was about our perspectives locally. So we had, for instance, Viraj Kumar from India, and he was going to talk about looking at and participating in the symposium from the India perspective. And I was bringing Ireland, and we had Andrew Luxton Riley coming in from the New Zealand angle, and a couple of other people. So that built up some steam, and then we decided to really look at the numbers. We had more than half the data at that point, and it was looking interesting. So we decided to carve out a chunk of time that was exactly a decade. And like I said, then go from ACM membership all the way down to who authors what papers versus posters and things like that.
Right. Did you look at symposium committee membership, session chairs, that kind of thing?
No, we did not do that. The deeper you get into the proceedings on the digital library, the more difficult these things get. In terms of authorship, it's not easy, but it's doable because the countries are listed in the papers. But for session chairs and everything else, there's the records are spotty, and they're held in by different people in different formats. Even just getting ACM and SIGCSE membership data and the data for the symposium in terms of registration and authorship. The authorship really came from the digital library, most of it. But the registration data it wasn't just sitting there. And that's one of the recommendations that we make. The paper does make several recommendations in terms of what the symposium and SIGCSE leadership could consider doing to progress the situation. And one of them is just simply better data keeping, because we found out really quick, without the data, you're just kind of talking and kind of going on facts that are hard to stand over.
Right.
Our study period was limited by data availability. Actually, we could only go back to 2010. We had some of the data before that, but we wanted to look at the whole picture, and the whole picture stopped with the weakest link, and the weakest link stopped in 2010.
Can you then talk about your role as the global liaison? And because I know you were the global liaison 2020 and now this year as well. Was that position there prior to you stepping in? And how is the global committee that is then part of that? What are their contributions? What role do they have within SIGCSE?
Okay, yeah. So, the role was certainly there before me. I was workshop chair for 2 years before I was global liaison,
and it was the international liaison.
That's right. So it was referred to as the international liaison and the international committee prior to last year, and that was one of the changes that I helped make happen, was to rebrand things as global. That came about through conversations with several people, including Manuel. When one day we kind of said, wait, SIGCSE is an international conference, so what is an international attendee? And it turned out really difficult to come up with a replacement for the word international. There was nothing jumping out of the dictionary at us, but we settled on global. So anyway, but the international liaison role, I believe, goes back to before 2000. So it's a while anyway, way more than a decade. I do think it was in the late 90s, but I'd have to look that up. And the committee was formed many years later, 2010 plus or minus a little bit, I think. And then, and part of the activity on site was a lunch. So the international lunch, which has been renamed, like everything else, the global lunch, but couldn't happen in Portland, despite the fact that I had the menu selected. So the lunch has been going on for a long time as well, well over a decade. And there was a big step in participation in the lunch and the on-site gatherings when the lunch was added to the registration system. Way before CVent was the registration system. When they put the lunch as an option during registration, a lot more people took that up. So in recent years, the lunch has been around 50 to 75 people, which is the majority of international attendees on the ground. So it's a nice thing because it does bring together a large portion of the global attendees. And in terms of the committee, there's about 18 people on the committee currently, maybe 19. That's expanded. It used to be about a dozen up until 2 years ago. And the idea is that it changes every year. Typically, there's a turnover of about 50% just to keep things fresh. And these are computing practitioners and researchers from all continents, actually, other than Antarctica. I think we don't have a representative from. If you know one, let me know.
We'll have to work on that.
So what they do primarily year round is they help spread the word and attract people, both old and new. So all people don't realize that this is happening normally, but all of the communications, the deadlines, the calls for papers, and all those sorts of things, when I see them, they go out to the global committee, and then the global committee disseminates them through their own channels. Some of them are officers in their local SIGCSE chapters in Ireland, China, Australasia. So it goes out on their lists. China, Australasia, and Ireland right there would reach 1,400 people that are members of those local chapters. And then, each different committee member would have different channels that they would also disseminate that information in. And then they also give a hand with various global liaison and committee activities, so like the special session here this year. We had a couple people from the global committee help lead sessions in breakout rooms and things like that. So it's great to have a dedicated group of people shared by a common goal that work together. And it's nice. It's a year-round thing. So in fact, one of the things that happens after the symposium, in the month after the symposium, is look at the global committee and start thinking about the next year.
Now, one thing that you attempted to start last year before it got preempted was the buddy program.
That's
and
right. Yeah.
You're doing that again this year.
Yep.
So what's that all about?
So the buddy program started, like you said, last year. And the idea was to pair up non-US attendees with more experienced attendees from anywhere. So it was anyone outside the US could put their hand up during registration And they would say that I'm a less experienced, less experienced non-US attendee. I'd like to be paired up with a self-declared more experienced attendee from anywhere. And the idea was to connect pairs on email. And in the weeks coming up to the symposium, I typically did a couple waves. So it was about a month out and then 3 weeks out, and then it dribbles in from there. And the individual pairs could take it where they wanted to. So even though we all know what happened in Portland, there were 2 or 3 pairs of buddies who were connected on email and then had some Zoom chats or email chats and made plans to meet in Portland. And 2 or 3 of them actually did meet in the lobby while we were waiting,
scrambling,
whatever was coming from the world.
What would a less experienced person get out of this?
I suppose it varies. I mean, it's interesting because I tend to be CC'd in these various email chains. So last year there was 117 people in, I think, 50 something pairs. And I was CC'd in some of those conversations pretty deep. Other people would BCC me right away. So I had some insight into what was going on. And like I said, there were Zoom chats. Some people really emailed a lot. I've had a few people contact me and say, I really enjoyed that. And it really went somewhere. People are now collaborating and working together. But so it really does vary. But the whole point was just so that you coming from outside the US last year, as a less experienced attendee, a lot of them were first timers, and to know a name and have an email in your pocket, so to speak, and to know that person was going to be there when I got to Portland, and you could meet or just know that person was going to be there. There were phone numbers swapped. It's nice when you when you leave it to the people. They can make what they want out of it. And logistically, it's a little bit of an operation logistically, but there's only so much we can do too, right? We can't get into phone numbers and everything else, so we just say, off you go.
Off you.
Right. But I suppose there are certain things that those of us who have been going to SIGCSE for years and years and years just take for granted, and as well as things that those of us who are from the U.S. take for granted about the way events are organized and the way buildings are laid out and the way cities are laid out and things like that.
Yep. And I have talked to people who are quite nervous about going to the States for SIGCSE. More than one person I've talked to, it's their first time going to the U.S. And questions like, how big is that city, and what does 450,000 mean? Give me a reference. Is that or is that Paris, or is that what? And it can seem daunting, and it's not just a new conference with 1,800 people, but it's a new country with hundreds of millions of people, and it definitely comes with its challenges.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a pretty experienced traveler, but when I go to a conference in another country besides the U.S., I'm always a little nervous. It's an adventure, but I'm a little nervous. So you're doing it again this year, right?
We are. It's going right now. I'm really enjoying it. It's expanded. It's expanded in scope and numbers, and then there's the virtual factor on top, which is probably affecting numbers as well. But we right now have where's my update here? I'll give you live numbers. We have 336 people in total, 255 self-declared less experienced buddies and 81 self-declared more experienced buddies. And this year, that's all it is. It's self-declared less experienced want to be paired up with self-declared more experienced. So there's no geographic boundaries this year in more ways than one. And because of those numbers, like I said, it was almost even last year. It was 70 something, 60 something or so in terms of less and more experienced. And this year it's 255 to 81. So it's not pairing anymore. It's
right. It's great that you have so many folks who are interested in participating, but it sounds like you need some more experienced folks to get involved. Is it too late at this point for people to volunteer, or can they still do that?
No, it's not too late to volunteer. And the easiest way to do that would probably be to email global@sigsc21.org. And then it would be good if people could go back and modify the registration, which is easy. You just go back to your confirmation email and click modify. It's free. And you just click, I want to be a more experienced buddy. And that keeps our books straight. But at this point, an email would do. And I'm kind of daily now looking at the registration numbers, and there's a few here and a few there, and I do what I can. And it's good to know who's interested as well for next year. We might look at possibly making this a more continuous thing and building a pool of experienced people who we don't have to ask every year would be a good way to safeguard against the future and streamline things as well. It could be maybe an opt-out thing, where you're in until you're out instead of every year. And there are some experienced buddies who really enjoy it. I mean, I get the odd person saying, hey, if you have any more, come to me. Happy to take more. It's really interesting. I have a few myself. I won't tell you how many, but I have a few. And it's really enlightening, and it's really cool to see other people's questions and concerns and views and to help them out. And you get interesting questions. What's a BOF? And then you think, I actually, I remember when I was wondering what that was.
Absolutely.
But you quickly forget. The minute you know, it's like riding a bike. You can't undo it. It's just, then it's there. So
no, it's great that it's expanded to the inexperience and taking out the geographical part of it, because I remember we had this conversation in 2020 when we said, hey, this is great, can we expand it? And we wanted to go forward right away in 2020, but we're like, no. Let's see how this goes first, and then, right? But I mean, I think the concept and how you made it work, it's been great. So, congrats on that. And now, the Technical Symposium is not the only conference in SIGCSE. I have not had the pleasure of going to IDSE or Comped by that fact, or ICER. So is there an equal committee at those conferences, or a liaison, or what can you tell us about Comped, for example, the newest addition to the SIGCSE umbrella?
Yeah, so to answer your question, no, they don't have the equivalent, but that's really that's a function of scale, I think.
Sure.
IDSE, is pretty firmly established in Europe, and there's a European contingent who kind of knows the drill, and there's a US contingent of regulars who also know the drill, and there's plenty of newcomers at IDSE as well. But I mean, there are times when we're all in the same room, and it's not, you could theoretically find the person you're looking for in 30 or 60 seconds, most likely, compared to the symposium, where it's a little more challenging at times. So I think that scale has something to do with it. And then Comp Ed, of course, is SIGCSE's newest conference. It had its first running in 2019 in Chengdu, China, and the whole mission of Comp Ed, when it was formed back in 2018, was to bring a SIGCSE conference to parts of the world that SIGCSE conferences weren't being held. So thanks to ICER, who was the big globe trotter up until that point, doing the Europe, North America, Australasia, and back again cycle. So we pretty much said, okay, no Europe and no North America for Comp Ed. Loosely defined. If Comp Ed wanted to go to Mexico, I think that would probably be okay. So with Europe and North America off the table, so to speak, that would leave the rest of the world to travel to. So if you remember, in 2016, IDICE went to Peru. And that was a bit of an experiment and it was the success of that, really, I think, that gave a good shot to the idea of a Comp Ed. And it wasn't, Comp Ed wasn't even called Comp Ed then, but the idea, to do this kind of conference that Comp Ed became, I think, that was when it really gathered some steam, so to speak. So Comp Ed is kind of shaped like ICER and IDICE in terms of organization. There's a steering committee of a handful of people, and the primary difference probably is that Comp Ed is designed to be every other year. And that was done for a number of reasons, but one of the most primary is to free up the calendar, because when you're moving anywhere on Earth, you have different academic seasons, you have different holidays, there's monsoon seasons, there's all these different things in the calendar. And another thing about Comp Ed is we didn't want it to be on top of any of the other conferences. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the calendar and you put IDICE and ICER and the symposium on it, and then put a 3-4 week buffer on either side of all of them, all of a sudden you only have 5-6 months max to consider, which makes the scheduling even more challenging. So by going every 2 years, it allows us to find and scout the sites, and it allows us to put together committees, program committee, which is, I don't want to say it's more challenging than the other conferences, but it has some unique considerations. Sometimes we don't even really know where we're going to be anywhere. When you don't know where the symposium is going to be, you kind of do still, in a way, but Comp Ed doesn't have that luxury. So anyway, where was I going with that? Every 2 years. And so, every 2 years then allows us to put the conference itself at many more places in the calendar.
Did you say when and where the next one is going to be?
So Comp Ed, like I said, every 2 years. So it was in 2019 in Chengdu, China, in May, and then the next site is India, in Hyderabad, and that was scheduled for December 2021. And due to the pandemic, we decided to postpone that, and that's where that is. So I suppose we could say, as of right now, it's December 2022 in Hyderabad, India, conditions permitting. We have decided to stick with December because that worked in India and it worked with the SIGCSE calendar. So we're hoping for December 2022 in Hyderabad, India.
And people should keep an eye on the mailing lists, right?
Absolutely. We will be looking to start making decisions in a couple months, but in reality, I would say don't hold your breath until September or so. We're gonna see what happens with the vaccines. We also watch the other conferences. If you look at the 2022 calendar, there's the symposium and then ITSE and then ICER, and then we're in December, which is turning out to be kind of nice because we are just going to somewhat take the lead in a way.
Right.
There's other people further down the road. We're just going to watch them.
Well, whenever it happens, I, for one, am looking forward to going to my first comp ed, since I wasn't able to make it to the inaugural version of that.
Great.
Brett, it has been great talking to you. Really appreciate you coming on SIGCSE Morning Coffee. And we've learned a lot. So thanks again.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing you around.
Thank you so much for watching.
Watch for the next episode on YouTube and in Pathable. And we can't wait to see you at the symposium.